What do you consider as the worst humanitarian crisis in Africa today, and how effectively are they being tackled by both African governments and the international community? Irene?
Thank you for having me, and I want to first of all begin by congratulating all humanitarians around the world who are commemorating the International Humanitarian Day today. But also, just in response to your question, I want to highlight that, well, there are a number of humanitarian crises that we are facing in Africa especially. I may want to speak maybe for Uganda, but globally all of us are affected by crises such as climate change, and also looking at the population movements. For Uganda alone, and like I said, I want to speak for Uganda. Uganda, we've had a number of humanitarian crises, and recently, for example, in eastern Uganda, we lost over 29 lives in a flood, and that is as a result of climate change. And then in the northern part of Uganda, where we have our brothers and sisters from Karamoja, they are dying to hunger. There's a lot of food insecurity in the area, and the place is very, very dry. So we are continuously losing lives to such humanitarian issues or crises, and many people are actually moving in a population movement because of political crisis. Look at the neighboring DRC Congo, look at South Sudan, where a majority of them are moving into Uganda on a daily basis because of political insecurity. And Uganda today is second world largest refugee hosting country because of humanitarian crisis. And so for me, yes, the international community might have had a role to play, but it's not really enough. We've not done so much to stop this from happening, but also the response, because when people come into Uganda, for example, we don't have enough resources to sustain them. When they come already, we are over 40 million Ugandans already in such a small country, and our resources are scarce. So when we get more refugees, for example, then we have to share the little resources that we have. And the international community sometimes is not able to sustain all the operations for refugee response, including the international organizations, the UN family. All of us are almost every other day fundraising and looking for resources to sustain the surging numbers of people that we have in the country, including the nationals. Because when the nationals do not have enough food, then they are not able to share with the refugees. Just the same way, people in Karamoja do not have enough food, and even as the nationals are not able to share the little we have because of scarcity. So we have such global humanitarian concerns that call for international support and a concern for each and everyone to come together and have a role to play in response.
Well, very important point that you've made there, Irene. Now let's talk about humanitarian workers. Humanitarian workers continue to be harmed, and they die in the line of duty. How can they be better protected to make sure they continue doing their job effectively? To that, you say what?
Well, I know that many times humanitarian workers are targeted because of maybe communities that are hurting, because maybe they see us responding to crisis of refugees, but then we are not meeting their needs. Sometimes there is that rage, yeah? I'll share an example in the western part of Uganda, where we have a big refugee settlement, and then the nationals feel the government is not doing enough to support them, but rather the government is diverting the resources and the attention to the refugees. So the communities normally develop rage, and then they fight back the refugees, but also the humanitarian workers. But it's important that most of the time we try to sensitize the public on our role. For us in the Red Cross, we call it safer access. We have these international frameworks that we bench on, and we call it the safer access framework. So it's important that we do a lot of dissemination of our principles on our mandates, and also sensitize the public about what we do, so that people can appreciate our roles in humanitarian response and also know how to protect us. Even during war, many times the people think the humanitarian workers are protecting their enemies, and sometimes they target us. Yeah, we have a campaign that we say, I am not a target, although it's not, like, behavior change takes time, yeah? It's not something that we can do in a very short period of time to avoid, but we labor to always sensitize and teach the others about our work, and then they can know how to protect and appreciate our work, and also protect the humanitarian workers in their countries.